Hello and welcome back to Bear Campers. Today we're going to be fitting charcoal stretch fabric up and over on the inside of the Teardrop trailer. We're also going to be doing a 9mm birch plywood surround to all the windows as a little detail. I will be putting some of the stretch fabric underneath the bed, and that's just to take out any of those little rattles and things like that. It doesn't really add any insulation, it's just there purely to soften those rattles of anything jiggering around whilst the van's shaking. Well, if you ignore the little bit I showed a moment ago, I am about to start putting the stretch fabric on the roof of the Teardrop trailer. Now, most of these are easy to cut. It's all squares. We've made everything really nicely so we can measure it, cut it to square, and then we can apply contact adhesive to both sides and then stick it up. I'll leave a link in the description for the contact adhesive. Okay, to the glue, I'm using a heat-proof contact adhesive. Now, it still needs to be applied to both sides as per normal contact adhesive, but this one's heat-proof. teardrop trailers, camper vans can get really hot when all the doors and windows are shut, so you've got to use something that's a little bit heat sensitive. One of the good things with this is it gives you a little bit of tacky time, so you've got time to move it around, adjust it, and make sure it's up there perfectly. Obviously, once it's dried, you can trim off any excess with a sharp knife. Okay, so let's talk about cutting the stretch fabric. Now, I get through a lot of blades. Just like a carpet fitter, you need a sharp blade to create a nice crispy edge. I use a scalpel blade, I'll leave a link in the description, and I probably get through between 20 and 50 per teardrop trailer. Well, thanks for sticking around. At the end of this teardrop trailer build, I'm going to do a cost breakdown so you can see exactly how much I spent on this teardrop trailer. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, and then you won't miss out on that video. As for all that beautiful birch plywood on our Teardrop trailer build, everything's been sanded to 120 grit and treated with Osmo worktop oil so that it's nice and sealed and a beautiful finish. Do you remember a couple of videos ago we cut holes in the walls of the Teardrop trailer to put the windows in, and right at this moment you can see the exposed 25mm insulation. It's not particularly pretty, so I'm making some cover strips out of flexible plywood and the stretch fabric, and they're going to be nailed and screwed, or pinned and screwed, into that little gap to make it look nice and pretty. And then later on in the video I'm going to create a little 9mm birch ply border. These little infill pieces are glued on with PVA glue to the wood, and then I'm using some of the PU contact adhesive onto the polystyrene so that it all grabs there. The staples or the nails are only there to hold it in place whilst the glue goes off, and then everything's tickety-boo. A little while back I went on holiday to San Francisco and I noticed that on the shelves in the condo that I was staying at, they had bungee cords across the front. I didn't really know what they were for until a few days later, and I thought that's a really good idea for in a camper van. So as you can see, I'm just putting some holes in the front of the plywood frame and I'm going to add a little bungee cord, and that's just going to stop things flying off the shelf. The window detail front and back isn't purely there for aesthetic reasons. It does provide a bit more stability for that window blind. So you've got the mesh that comes down so that you can have the window open day and night, no bugs. And also you've got the thermal blind there you can close at night and it blacks everything out. Really, really good design. I can highly recommend the windows. I'll leave a link in the description. You can take a look for yourselves. Unlike that first kiss many years ago in high school, you can subscribe to me and we can break up later. I don't mind.